I never thought I'd find myself in this situation. Betrayal was something I associated with others, not with myself. I always believed I was different, that my loyalty and sense of right and wrong would guide me through any temptation. But life has a way of challenging everything you think you know about yourself. It all started with Claire and Ethan. Claire was my best friend, the kind of person who could light up a room with her presence. We'd known each other since high school, and our bond was unbreakable. Or so I thought. She was everything I admired, confident, caring, and fiercely loyal. When she started dating Ethan 2 years ago, I was thrilled for her. He was charming, intelligent, and seemed to adore her. They were the perfect couple, the kind you see in movies, and I was genuinely happy for them. But then things started to change. Ethan and I had always gotten along well. We shared similar interests, music, books, even the same dry sense of humor. Claire often joked that if she hadn't met him first, I might have ended up with him. At the time, it seemed harmless, just a fun little jab at how well Ethan and I connected. The first time I noticed something was off was at a dinner party Claire and Ethan hosted at their apartment. It was a small gathering, just a few close friends. As the night went on and the wine flowed, I found myself alone in the kitchen with Ethan, helping him prepare dessert. Claire was out on the balcony with the others, laughing and enjoying the evening. As Ethan sliced strawberries, he turned to me and smiled. "You know, I really appreciate how you've always been there for Claire. She's lucky to have a friend like you." I smiled back, feeling a warmth in my chest. "She's my best friend. I'd do anything for her." He looked at me for a moment, his eyes lingering on mine in a way that made my heart skip a beat. It was a fleeting moment, but something about it felt different, charged with an undercurrent I couldn't quite place. I brushed it off as my imagination and focused on the task at hand, but that moment stayed with me. I found myself thinking about it more often than I should have, replaying it in my mind. I tried to ignore the feelings that were starting to bubble up inside me, feelings I knew were wrong. This was Ethan, Claire's boyfriend. He was off limits, and that was that, except it wasn't. A few weeks later, Claire had to go out of town for a work conference. She asked if I could check in on Ethan while she was gone, just to make sure he wasn't lonely. I agreed, of course, not thinking much of it. It was a simple favor for a friend, nothing more. The first night, I stopped by his apartment after work. We ordered takeout, watched a movie, and talked about everything and nothing. It was easy, comfortable, like spending time with an old friend. But as the night went on, that same undercurrent from the dinner party returned. I found myself hyper-aware of Ethan's presence, of the way his arm brushed against mine when he handed me a glass of wine, of the way his eyes seemed to follow me a little too closely. When the movie ended, Ethan suggested we play a game of cards. We sat at his kitchen table, the warm glow of the overhead light casting a soft shadow on his face. As we played, the conversation grew more personal. He talked about his childhood, his dreams, his fears. I listened, captivated by his openness, by the way he seemed to let his guard down around me in a way I'd never seen before. It was during a lull in the conversation, as we both sat quietly, that he reached across the table and took my hand. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. This was the moment where I should have pulled away, where I should have made it clear that this was crossing a line, but I didn't. Instead, I looked into his eyes, and in that instant, everything changed. He leaned in, and before I knew what was happening, his lips were on mine. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, as if we were both testing the waters, but then it deepened, and all the feelings I'd been trying to suppress came rushing to the surface. It was wrong, and I knew it, but in that moment, I didn't care. All I cared about was the way Ethan's hands felt on my skin, the way his breath mingled with mine, the way he made me feel alive in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. When we finally pulled away, both of us were breathless. The reality of what had just happened hit me like a ton of bricks. I stared at Ethan, my mind racing with guilt and confusion. "We can't do this," I whispered, my voice trembling. "This is wrong, Ethan." He nodded, running a hand through his hair. "I know, God, I know. but I can't stop thinking about you. I haven't been able to stop since that night at the dinner party." I felt a surge of panic. "Ethan, this isn't fair to Claire. She's my best friend. I can't betray her like this." He reached for my hand again, and I let him, even though I knew I shouldn't. "I care about you more than I should. I don't know what to do with these feelings." I pulled my hand away, standing up from the table. "We have to stop. This can't happen again." But even as I said the words, I wasn't sure I believed them. The connection between us was undeniable, and I didn't know if I was strong enough to resist it. The next few days were torture. I avoided Ethan, trying to put as much distance between us as possible, but it was no use. He was always on my mind, a constant presence that I couldn't shake. I felt like I was living a double life, pretending everything was normal when I was with Claire, while secretly battling the guilt and longing that consumed me. And then, just when I thought I might be able to push those feelings aside, Ethan called. "I need to see you," he said, his voice strained. "Please, I can't do this over the phone." I should have said no. I should have ended it right there, told him we couldn't see each other anymore, not like that. But instead, I found myself agreeing to meet him at a coffee shop we both liked, away from the prying eyes of anyone who might know us. When I arrived, Ethan was already there, sitting at a table in the corner. He looked up as I approached, his expression a mixture of relief and anguish. I sat down, my heart pounding in my chest. "We have to talk about what happened," he said, not wasting any time. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "I'm sorry," he continued, his voice thick with emotion. "I never meant for any of this to happen, but the truth is, I can't stop thinking about you. I'm trying, but it's like you're always there, in my head, in my heart." I looked down at my hands, my mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. "Ethan, this isn't right. You're with Claire. She loves you, and you love her. I can't come between that." He reached across the table, taking my hand in his. "But what if it's not that simple? What if what I feel for you is something real, something that I can't ignore?" His words sent a shiver down my spine. I wanted to believe him, wanted to give in to the feelings that had been building inside me for weeks, but I couldn't do that to Claire. I couldn't betray her like this. "This can't happen," I said, pulling my hand away. "We have to stop before it goes any further." Ethan looked at me, his eyes filled with a pain that mirrored my own. "Is that really what you want? To walk away from whatever this is?" I hesitated, torn between what I knew was right and what my heart was telling me. "I don't know," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "But I know that I can't be the reason Claire gets hurt. I can't do that to her." Ethan leaned back in his chair, running a hand over his face. "I don't want to hurt her either, but I also don't want to lose you." His words hung in the air between us, heavy with the weight of the decision we both knew we had to make. I felt tears prickling at the corners of my eyes, and I quickly blinked them away. I think it's best if we don't see each other for a while," I said, my heart breaking with each word. "At least not alone. We need to put some distance between us for Claire's sake." Ethan nodded, though I could see the reluctance in his eyes. "If that's what you need, I'll respect it. But just know that I'm here if you ever need to talk about anything." I managed a small smile, though it didn't reach my eyes. "Thank you." We sat in silence for a few moments, the reality of what we were doing sinking in. It felt like the end of something beautiful and tragic, something that never should have begun in the first place. When we finally parted ways, I felt an overwhelming sense of loss. But I also knew it was the right thing to do. I couldn't let my feelings for Ethan destroy the most important relationship in my life. The next few weeks were a blur. I threw myself into work, trying to distract myself from the ache in my chest. Claire noticed that something was off, but I brushed it off as stress. I couldn't bear to tell her the truth, to see the look of betrayal in her eyes. And then, one evening, everything came crashing down. Claire and I were out for drinks, catching up after a long week. She was laughing, telling me a story about something that had happened at work, when suddenly she stopped, her expression turning serious. "Can I ask you something?" she said, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "Of course," I replied, though my heart began to race. She looked down at her drink, swirling the liquid around in her glass. Has something been going on between you and Ethan? The question hit me like a punch to the gut. I stared at her, my mind racing for an answer, but I couldn't lie to her, not about this. Claire, I'm so sorry, I began, my voice trembling. Nothing happened, I swear, but there were feelings on both sides. We never acted on them, but it was wrong, and I should have told you. Claire's face paled, and she set her glass down on the table, her hands shaking. I knew something was off, I could feel it, but I never wanted to believe it was true. Tears welled up in my eyes. I'm so sorry, Claire. I never wanted to hurt you. I tried to stop it before it went too far, but I know that doesn't make it right. She looked at me, her eyes filled with hurt and betrayal. How could you? How could both of you do this to me? I reached out, but she pulled away, shaking her head. I trusted you. I trusted both of you, and you went behind my back. The tears I had been holding back finally spilled over, and I buried my face in my hands. I'm so sorry, I sobbed. I never wanted this to happen. I love you, Claire, and I'll do anything to make it right. But she just stood up, her face set in a mask of cold determination. I need time, she said, her voice icy. I need time to figure out if I can ever forgive you. She turned and walked away, leaving me sitting there alone, my heart shattered into a million pieces. The days that followed were some of the darkest of my life. Claire stopped returning my calls and texts, and I knew that I had lost her. I had betrayed the one person who had always been there for me, and I didn't know if I'd ever be able to forgive myself. Ethan tried to reach out, but I ignored him. I couldn't face him, not after what had happened. The guilt was too much to bear, and I knew that I had to let him go, no matter how much it hurt. In the end, I was left with nothing but the hollow ache of what could have been. I had lost my best friend, and the possibility of something more with Ethan had been snuffed out before it even had a chance to begin. And as I sat in my empty apartment, the weight of my choices pressing down on me, I realized that some mistakes can never be undone. Some betrayals can never be forgiven. But I also knew that life goes on. The pain would fade eventually, and I would find a way to move forward. But I would never forget the lessons I had learned, the lines I had crossed, and the friendships I had lost. Because in the end, betrayal is not just about the act itself. It's about the trust that is broken, the relationships that are shattered, and the people who are left picking up the pieces. And that is a wound that never truly heals.